Welcome to Motherhood. I'm Dr. Christina Hibbert, and I'm here each week to help you overcome, to become, and to flourish in your interesting experience as a mother and this great, crazy ride we call motherhood. I'm so grateful for all of you joining us each week, and hope that you are also joining us online at my website at drchristinahibbert.com, as well as on social media, on Facebook, and also on our Facebook group, which is called Growing Through Motherhood. I know many of you have joined us there, and it's been really fun to get to know you a little bit better. And I'm hoping as the weeks and months go by that more of you will join us there, and it will become a place where we can all just get to know each other a little bit better and share ideas and be real as moms. Also, join us on other social media, Instagram, Pinterest, Twitter, YouTube. And remember that a lot of these videos, a lot of these shows that we do are also video recorded. So you can watch the video if you like, if you prefer. And today's episode is no exception to that. You can watch the video for today's episode on our YouTube channel as well at Dr. Christina Hibbert. Now, I am excited for today's topic. I've been looking forward to it for a while because it's one that applies to each of us as a mother, whether you know it or not. And today what we're talking about is leadership and motherhood. And specifically, we're going to talk about how to be a leader in your own life. Now, when I started thinking about this idea, I could imagine some of you listeners out there thinking to yourself, well, I'm not a leader. I don't need to talk about leadership. I'm not a president of something or the head of the PTO or, I don't do anything like that. And I want to say, first of all, that I understand why you feel that way. I think we've all felt that way before, like we're nothing special, we're not a leader. But also, I'm sure that you would agree with me that as mothers, we are important leaders in many, many ways. And we're going to talk about how leadership shows up in our lives and what we can do to improve our leadership skills and abilities. Now, in my life, I've been able to be a leader in many different aspects. I went to graduate school when I already had 2 children. And so, I didn't feel like I wasn't working outside of the home at first. And I didn't really feel like I was much of a leader. And even in school, I didn't feel like much of a leader. And it wasn't until after I graduated and I had this passion for helping women with postpartum depression. And so I eventually founded the Arizona Postpartum Wellness Coalition. And at that time, I had to really learn what it was like to be a leader in that capacity. I had to go out and gather people and hold forums to discuss the issues and see, who was on board to help me because I couldn't do it alone, and set up a board. And, we had to become a nonprofit and all of this stuff. And I learned a lot about leadership at that time, but it also made me really reflect on the ways in which I was a leader for my kids, and how much we as mothers are leaders in our home in general. And it really I started to really understand in a bigger, broader way. I had caught glimpses of this before when my children were little, even things like as they got older and saying prayers at night, let's say, and then they start saying what you say, and they repeat you, they model themselves after you, and you start to go, wait a minute, I need to be careful what I'm doing, because if they're watching me all the time, and if I'm a leader, then they need to, I need to be doing the right things, right? But at this time in my life, it was sort of a bigger idea of, even what I do inside or outside of the house, my kids are watching. There's that old saying that if mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. And that's for sure true, right? So we need to realize that we have so much pull in our families and in our children's lives and hopefully in our own lives as well. And that's why I love that we're going to focus in on how we can be leaders in our own lives, because I think as moms, one downside when it comes to leadership is I think a lot of times we let other things and other people and other responsibilities lead us versus us leading them. And in fact, a couple weeks ago, about a month ago, I went to a conference. It was a hypnotherapy conference, and I'd never studied hypnotherapy, but it was the first time, and it was really interesting. And I actually volunteered to be the subject for one of these sessions. And it was on kind of using hypnotherapy to reach your highest potential. And I thought it was really interesting. And I had been having a lot of anxiety because we had some things going on with our older children that were really just keeping me up at night and up early in the morning, and, just a lot of stress with the holidays and everything else going on. And so I was just beat. I was exhausted, and I volunteered because what I told him was, I've been having a ton of anxiety and I don't know what to do. So I'd love to try whatever you can do. I'll try it, And so we did this hypnotherapy thing. And part of it was, he had me imagine an actress, and I picked Julia Roberts. And so he had you imagine kind of, and you guys can do this as you're listening. You can imagine any favorite actress that you have, and that she is starring in a movie about your life. And how would she handle things? Not how would I handle it, but how would she handle, these stressors in your life and these worries about your children? What would she do? And when I could see her doing it, it was so much easier. It was like, well, she would take charge. She'd have one of those take charge moments that they show on TV, like the montage of, hey, we're going to go get it done. And she'd go cancel a bunch of things, and she'd focus on her family, and she'd have a wonderful Christmas together. And, the point was, well, that's what you can do. And then he kind of said, and at the beginning of the new year, what would be different in her life? And this is what stuck with me. I said, she would be in charge of her life and not everybody else being in charge of her. And that is what I'm hoping today you all out there listening get to take home with you, is how to be that leader in your own life, and not feel like everybody else is in charge of you, but that you have some say, and that you can actually really influence your family and the world by working on your skills as a leader. So all that being said, I am really excited to invite our guest in now to join the show. Our guest today is Dr. Christi Hegstad. And Christi, thank you so much for being here today.
It's my pleasure. I've so been looking forward to this.
Me too. I actually was a guest on one of Christi's podcast shows. And so now we get to do it again. And it was a great first experience for me too. So I'm glad to have you here.
Great.
So let me tell you, let me tell everybody a little bit about you, and then we will jump right in and let you share all your wisdom with us. So a little bit about Christi. She's Dr. Christi Hegstad. She coaches people to work, live, and lead life with meaning and purpose. And that's one thing I loved. And I think we found each other on Twitter or something. But that's one thing I loved about it, is like meaning and purpose. I'm all about it. So she's actually a certified executive and leadership coach. She's an author, she's a speaker, and she's president of MAP, M-A-P, Meaning and Purpose, right? Professional Development, Inc. So it's a coaching and training firm based in Iowa. She started this many years ago. She turned her passion for growth and leadership into her career. And so she has been actually living what she's going to talk about today, being a leader by stepping out and doing what she wanted to do. She's also been honored as an Iowa Business Owner of the Year, and as a 40 Under 40 award recipient. And she was also recently named president of the Iowa chapter of the International Coach Federation. She's obviously a sought-after speaker and writer, and you can find out lots more about her at her website, which is meaning-and-purpose.com. Right? Okay.
Yep, it's kind of a mouthful, but yeah.
That's okay. I would say meaning and purpose, but you need the dashes in there, right? So
right.
meaningandpurpose.com. And of course, Christi is a married mom to 3 wonderful kids. She was just telling me they are 16, 15, and 12.
Correct.
So she's in the thick of it, like I am, like many of us are, like we all are. We're all in the thick of it in different ways. We're in the teenager thick of it. Many of you are in the little baby thick of it. We're all in some kind of thick. And she's been married for 20 years, and it's just wonderful to have you here. You can also find her on social media. You can find her on Facebook /MAP Inc. fan. You can also find her on Twitter at Dr. Christi Coach. And she and we spell our name exactly the same way, which nobody spells it this way.
I love that.
Right? But it makes it easy. So it's CHRISTI, Dr. Christi Coach. And on LinkedIn and Instagram, Dr. Christi Hegstad. Anyway, so great to have you here. So
yeah, great. Thank you so much for inviting me.
All right, my pleasure. So let's talk about leadership and motherhood. And first of all, I thought we could start off by talking about what does it mean. You heard me in my introduction kind of saying, and I'm sure you would agree, I'm sure there are a lot of moms listening right now thinking, I'm not a leader. But I think we would both beg to differ. So tell me what you think it means to leadership in motherhood.
Yeah, I think you captured it so well. And as you were talking, I was thinking just a couple of years ago, I was doing a seminar for about 100 women. And I am of the belief that we are all leaders. We're all leaders in our lives. Leadership is a big part of that is influence. And so if we are, talking to our children, if we're bumping into somebody in the street, wherever we are, we're actually influencing those people. So I just kind of have this base assumption that we're all leaders. And I was doing this seminar, and about 3/4 of the way through, it was all about leadership. And about 3/4 of the way through, it kind of dawned on me, for whatever reason, that maybe not everybody has this same this same thought around leadership. So I asked the
Right.
question, how many of you consider yourselves leaders? And I was surprised that there were a number of people who did not, for those very reasons that you said. I don't have a title, or a president of something, or those kinds of things. And leadership is so not about title. It's really about who we are in the world and what change we're influencing in the world and how we're making an impact. So I really appreciate that you said that. And I think as parents, especially, that's one of the biggest leadership roles you can possibly imagine, because we spend so much time with these, from babyhood on, helping form these, model, hopefully, what we want to see in the world, and raising these children to be, good people and so forth, too. So it's a huge leadership role. And everywhere we are, we have that opportunity to lead, too.
Yeah, I love that. You're right. It's funny that you had to question yourself about, like, does everybody not believe this the same way I believe? Because it's what you love and you're passionate about it. But you're right. I agree. I think we're all leaders in some way. But it's just, we kind of do also have to own it, don't you think, in order to really develop those skills as a leader in one way or another. We have to own it.
Yes, yes. So there are so many different ways to do that. It doesn't have to be the traditional, when you think of a leader of a company, for example, and maybe what their responsibilities are. There are just so many different paths to leadership. And I don't feel that there's one right way. If you're honoring your own strengths and your purpose, and, doing authentically, being out there and doing what you love and doing what you need to do, that you can lead in that way too. It doesn't matter whether you have, any kind of a title or any of that. It's really more about who you are in the world and who you want to be in the world and how you're doing that.
Yeah, I like how you define that. So I hope everybody's hearing that. The leadership really isn't about being this certain person, this certain title, position, anything like that. It's about how you want to be in the world. And I liked what you said about it's the impact you want to make on the world.
Yeah.
And that includes your world, your home world and beyond, right?
Right.
It's all of that.
Right, absolutely.
So let's kind of break it down. So let's talk about, like, maybe you could give an example or two on how are mothers leaders in the home? Like, in what ways are we leaders in our own home?
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I think you touched on some of those in the introduction too, just like when you notice that your kids start to say the things that you're saying, and you have those moments of, right,
Yes.
like I do need to pay attention to that, where I think that's such a good eye-opening experience, to realize that we are being paid attention to, we are being watched, and we want to put our best selves out there, hopefully, And so, when you ask that question, one thing that comes to mind for me, it's fresh on my mind, I guess. I just wrote a blog about it yesterday, but I was thinking about how you start your day. So, and how that can really set the tone for your entire day. And in the blog, I kind of talked about it as being the leader of your day. And I started a morning practice probably about 10 years ago. And it's, for me, there's quite a bit involved in that, when I wake up in the morning, just the routine that I follow. So that incorporates, journaling and, different things like that. But the reason that I started that practice, or one of the big reasons, is that I realized that I was often waking up and either not being in the best mood, because I haven't
Yeah.
woken up on my own terms, or just not really being the positive presence that I wanted to be in the world, whether I was hitting snooze 5 times or whether I was being woken up in some other way or whatever. So I decided I wanted to do things differently because I wanted to be the leader in my own life.
Hmm.
So I started this morning practice. And that is something, I mean, that was probably like 10 years ago, and I still do it almost every day, which is big for somebody like me because I'm a very all or nothing personality. So a lot of times I'll do something, go go all in for a while and then, do something else now. So,
Yes, I
but
can relate.
it just made such an impact. Right, right. Just made such a difference in how I started my day. And I decided, at the start of the day in that quiet time of the morning, and still do get to decide, who do I want to be today? How do I want to be today? And I found that, by the time the rest of the family wakes up, if I've had a little bit of that time to make those decisions and be intentional about that, then I'm a little, I'm in a better space to then start the day with them and carry out throughout the rest of the day too. So that's just one simple example of just deciding here's how I want to start my day, and it really does set the tone for the rest of the day. So that can be an easy way. I shouldn't say easy, because if you're up at night a lot with for
Right.
whatever reason
You
sort
still
of
might
thing.
be
Not
tired,
always
but
easy.
you might at least start it in
Right.
a better mood or attitude or focus or whatever for the day.
Right,
So
right.
can
And
you
it
tell
could be
us,
even just, oh,
so explain a
go ahead.
little bit, like, what do you actually do in the morning? What's your routine?
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
as an
So for me,
example.
yep, yep. I wake up a little bit earlier than everybody. Well, probably about an hour earlier than the rest of the family now at this point.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And um, the first thing I do is drink 2 glasses of water, which
That's good.
the reason I do that is I'm not the best at drinking water throughout the day, but I know
Oh,
it's important. So I start the day with that. And also just to kind of wake up, there's a lot of health benefits to that too.
oh yeah, that's great.
But and I start the day with gratitude. So I always start just kind of thankful for the day and thankful for what lies ahead, everything that's led up to this point and what's about to come.
Hmm.
And then, like I said, I journal. That's really the heart of my morning practice. So,
Hmm.
and my journaling is very much free flowing. So, if you looked through my journal, you'd find to-do lists, and you'd find, here's what we did as a family last night. Here's a problem I'm working on. Here's a book chapter idea that I have. It like runs the
Yes.
gamut.
Hmm.
Just kind of getting all of that out of my mind and heart and onto paper. Coffee is a big part of my morning practice because I love coffee. And then I read a devotional. So kind of
Okay.
after I've done a lot, some of my journaling and gotten some of that out, I'll read a devotional. Mine is usually faith-based, and just kind of spend some time in prayer too, and then wrap up with gratitude. And also just thinking about the day ahead. If I have my calendar nearby or my planner, I'll look and see what's up during the day, what do I have ahead? And a lot of times I will set an intention based on what that is too. So for example, a couple of weeks, maybe 2 weeks ago, something like that, I looked at my schedule for the day, and there were just a lot of things going on. It was a really busy day, and a couple of them, potentially nerve-wracking, just important things. And so I set the intention that day of smile. That was my intention, because I knew I could be very harried and frantic and nervous and all of that throughout the day if I let myself be. But I set that intention of smile. And so every time, throughout the day when I would think of that word, I mean, it's hard to think of the word smile without actually smiling,
Good
and it's
point.
hard to be frenzied or, in that nervous state or whatever when you've set that intention to be a different way. So,
Mhm.
so that's kind of how my morning practice is. But, I say that I've kind of worked up to that. So when I first started this, my kids were quite a bit younger, and we were on a different schedule
Yeah.
for everything, sleep and school and all of that. So when I first started, it might be just a few minutes in the morning that I would get up a little bit earlier and just, maybe do a small portion of that, or just have those gratitude moments, or the who and how I want to be throughout the day. Whatever that is, just to kind of start the day being the leader of your own life. And then, if the rest of the day sometimes goes haywire, but at least you've started that, in that
That's
mode,
right.
and can
At
carry
least you got
that
off to a
through.
good start, right? And
Right,
I want
right.
to break this down because you made so many good points here. And, first of all, saying that, one way and this is something simple that we can all do. We can all be a leader by starting the day off right and putting some intention into our day. And that brings more meaning to the day, right? And we can teach this to our children just by simply doing it ourselves. And I appreciated your point, first of all, for sharing what you do, because the point is that, for all of you listeners out there, this is going to be something personal for you. And some people are going to have a harder time getting up early than others. But I am a big fan of try to get up a little early so you can have that time that's just for you to kind of set your day. And I do the same thing. I try to get up an hour before my kids. I have kids that leave really, really early, and then I have kids that leave like normal early. So sometimes I get up and do part of it, and then I go get some of the first group off, and then I have another half hour, and then I get to get the other ones off. But, we make it work. But like you said, it's also about the season of life that you're in and what is possible for you at that time, right? So, when we had babies and we were exhausted, I know I was not getting myself up early, ever, right. But right. I would try to fit in journaling right before bed at night or scripture study, and now I have a routine. I get up, I exercise, I do scripture study, I pray, I try to do a meditation, and same thing, kind of like set an intention. And while I'm exercising, I do my gratitude. So, when I'm jogging, I can kind of think of all the things I'm grateful for to kind of give me something to think about. And I loved what you shared about an intention for the day, because I think that really is helpful. It's something I've also written about on my website. You guys can go check that out as well, or check out Christi's blog post that she mentioned. And it kind of helps you to set a vision for the day. So you can kind of look forward and like almost envision the best possible case scenario and what do you need to get there, right? And like you said, it could be something just like smile or breathe. Sometimes mine is just breathe and
right.
slow down or, or speed up or whatever it might need to be for the day,
Yeah.
So,
and, I think along with that, such a good point there is that so many of us spend time, whether we're at home all day or we're in the workplace or whatever we're doing. What I hear a lot people say is, I'm tired of being in reactive mode. Mm-hmm. And so something like this, like a morning practice or just the setting the intention or whatever it is, planning your day before the day begins, any of those allow you to be proactive and for you to decide, in advance who you want to be rather than, letting circumstances decide that for you or other people's moods. It's so easy to kind of have your own mood influenced by others' moods, especially early in the morning. And so when you decide, for yourself, this is how I want to be, it just makes it easier, I think, to then follow through on that and then have a meaningful, purposeful day because you've set it up that way in a proactive way rather than just reacting to what's coming at you. And I think that makes such a huge difference in so many aspects of life.
That's such a good point. You are setting yourself up for success day by day when you do this. And however you do it, whatever it involves for you, this is just a really great point, a way to lead and be the example, but also really personally to sort of take charge and say, you know what, I'm going to give myself the best possible chance of success today by doing these things that I know are going to help me to feel well and, do what I want to do and be the person. That was the other thing I want to point out. You say, it's about being who you want to be. That's what leadership is really about to me, don't you think? Especially leadership in our own life is about being who we really want to be in the home, in the world, everywhere.
Right. I agree with that 100%. And knowing, what your values are, what matters most to you, and being able to honor that. And, when we talk about success too, just like leadership, it doesn't come with, a certain title or a certain income or anything like that. It's really, each of us needs to decide what success means for us or what a successful day is for us. Yes. And then if you can go to bed at night and kind of reflect on that and think, there were some things I would do differently next time or whatever, but overall, I hit these high points or I'm glad I did this way or I honored my priorities or whatever that is, then that's success,
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And I think also this also feeds into our relationships. To me, I think as women and mothers, a lot of our success really is and probably should be defined around our relationships and how successful and meaningful are our relationships with our children, with our spouse or partner, with others in our lives. And when we're doing these things to take care of ourselves, we're also leading in our relationships and strengthening those as well. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would. And I think, with leadership as a parent too, it comes in different forms too, because in one way you can lead by I mean, I think maybe the biggest one is leading by example and
Mm.
just modeling for our kids and for others around us and so forth too, that you can do things differently, or you can, you don't have to be the victim of circumstance. You can be intentional. You can, and when you talk about self-care, and I know you've talked about that a lot on your podcast and so forth too, that comes up a lot, I think, with women in
Oh,
general, that whole
yes.
topic of self-care,
It's a
because
big
it's
one.
so important.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And I think, so many times I hear, and I experience this myself too, feeling guilty that I'm taking time away from others in order to focus on myself, or something of that nature. Whereas when we can think of it as how are others benefiting from us doing this, and how are we modeling this? I wouldn't want my children to grow up feeling like they could never spend time by themselves or doing something that honors themselves, just because that's what they saw me do all the time. So I think, when we can think of it in that perspective, and I love the hypnotherapy story that you told at the beginning about just kind of that objectivity that brings to think about what would so and so do in this situation, because we can get so stuck in our own heads that just sometimes if you think about, what would somebody else do in this situation, or how might this be benefiting somebody else, it kind of gets us out of our own heads and allows us to think with a little bit more perspective, maybe.
Yeah, I agree. I think even just if you're struggling, like for you listeners, if any of you are struggling to believe that you are a leader, imagine how somebody that you think is a leader might, approach their day or handle their relationships or be with their children, and then act as if you were like that. You were the leader until you believe it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So okay. So let's talk a little bit about balance. We've talked about this a lot on the show too, because it's such a
Right.
big issue. And I agree, balance is a myth too. I have my own thoughts on that, but I want to know your thoughts on why balance is a myth, and kind of what your take on balance is.
Yeah. Yeah. It's such an interesting topic because everybody thinks about it a little bit differently. A lot of times we think of balance as equal time to these different life areas. And it's just, life it's not always cut up in neat quarters like that.
Yes.
So for me, instead of balance, there are kind of two different ways that I look at it. One is more about centering, and really focusing on your purpose and your passions and your values and those kinds of things. And if you are centered and all of those things are kind of radiating out of you in your work and in your parenting and in your relationships with people and in your conversation with the checkout clerk at the grocery store and, all of those things, then you can live a very centered life, regardless of if you're spending, X amount of time at work and X amount of time at home and X amount of time exercising, or, whatever that might look like.
Yeah, I
So
love
I think,
that.
for me anyway, I think I'd rather look at it in terms of, am I centered? And, are these things radiating out of me, as opposed to, I think of balance sometimes as like just this fragile teetering of,
I
like
know.
if one thing goes out of whack, then, I'm
Then the
gone.
whole thing is gonna fall. I'm so with you.
Right.
I'm loving this. Okay, I gotta interrupt here because I'm loving this centering. That is the perfect word, and I'm glad that you gave that to me, because I'm always trying to look for a better word than balance. Because to me, I agree. I think the same thing. We're always trying to get balanced, but balance is more of like a feeling that you have when things are centered, So
Yeah.
you can't like go balance yourself. It doesn't really work that way. It's not like we aren't like a
Right.
little teeter-totter that can just balance. And so centering, though, that sounds like something I can do. I can make sure that my thoughts, that my emotions, that my day, that my activities are centered around those things that really matter to me.
Yeah,
I love
yeah.
that.
And the other piece of that, or the other way I kind of think of this too, is that
Yeah.
imbalance can be okay.
Mm-hmm.
As long as you're imbalanced in favor of those things, like your purpose and your strengths and so forth
Oh.
too. So
Mm-hmm.
maybe you're spending more time on, this area than this area, but if it's feeding you and it's benefiting those around you and it's meaningful, all of those pieces, then maybe that's not a bad thing.
Yeah, exactly. Especially if it's not going to be that way forever. You know what I mean? It might tip this
Right.
way for a while and you tip back
Yeah.
and, kind
Yeah.
of. I
Yeah.
love that. And to me, it's really, to kind of piggyback on what you're saying, I always say that really balance is about choices. And that's
Yeah.
exactly what you're saying. So instead of seeking balance, you have to look at your choices day by day, minute by minute. What am I choosing? And is it leading me more toward that sense of feeling centered or balanced in my life, or away from that? Is it leading me toward the things that really supposedly really matter to me, that I really have, give me meaning and purpose, or away from that.
Yeah, yeah. And a lot of my work is coaching people to do what you love, essentially, to figure out what that is, what lights you up and energizes you, and then
Mm-hmm.
how can you do that more? How can you bring that to work and to your life and all of those things? And so when you are in that zone, or you're in flow, then you might spend more time in a certain area, or you might not have complete balance, but you are energized by what you're doing and you're making a difference and you can see that. And so that really just kind of filters in those other areas. So it's almost like balance isn't even, it's not necessary, maybe, if we're
Yeah.
looking at it in different ways.
You're bringing up a good point, and I want to ask you a question about this because I think a lot of listeners out there probably loved what you just said about, finding what you love and doing that. And I heard the question in my mind, well, yeah, but what if I'm a mom and I don't love every part of it? And how do I bring what I love to that? How do I do that if that's my main responsibility? I know I personally experience that all the time. I used to say, I love being a mom, but I hate the job. Like, I love the role, but I hate the job. I hate the cleaning and the cooking and the playing with toys on the floor. I'm just not good at that. I can talk to my kids. I like to take them places. I don't like playing Barbies, So how do we, if that's our main job right now, what would you say to help those women who might be struggling with that, to feel like they have that meaning and purpose or joy or whatever in that role?
Yeah, I love that question because I totally, and even, if you were in a position that you're doing what you love, or you run your own business or whatever, and it's all around your passions, there's going to be aspects of that you still have to do that aren't your favorite,
Right. Yes.
So, but I think, what it comes down to for me is that, when I think of meaningful work, for example, that's a phrase that I use a lot, that I focus on a lot. And work to me is all life's work. It doesn't have to be just paid employment. It's, if your role as a parent, that's work. There's our, if you're a full-time volunteer. So work is very all encompassing in my world. And I really believe that meaning comes from the spirit in which we do that work. Yeah. So if we are coming at that from, it kind of wraps up all of what we've talked about up to this point almost of, being intentional and being proactive and knowing our purpose and our values and so forth. And if we're able to bring that into whatever role we're in, whatever work we're doing, then it's, that makes a difference in that way. And I think about, like when my kids were really young, and I have to chuckle at you, saying I don't really like to play Barbies because, there were times when my kids, when they were really young, I can actually picture this specific moment where we were down in the basement and all three of my kiddos were on the floor and they were playing different things. I think one was playing instruments and one had Barbies or Fisher Price people or something. And I was on the couch reading a book.
Yes. Well, that sounds good. I like that.
Yeah. And in my mind thinking, kind of having that guilt of I should be down on the floor playing with them. Yeah. And I did get down on the floor and play with them a lot, so it's not like I never did. But I also, when I thought about that too, I thought I also want to model the joy of reading for my children. Reading is a huge thing in my life. Yeah. And so I want them to see me doing something that I enjoy also, even at those young ages, and so I was still there, I was still present, but it kind of dawned on me that there's benefits to that too. And all three of my children, I mean, I can't credit that for it, but they're all readers and they're, so I think there's value in, not comparing yourself, first of all, to whether it's to other people or to this ideal of here's what I should be doing, but, deciding here's where I thrive, here's where I can really be at my best with my kids, here's where I can help them the most, and really trying to bring about those moments as much as possible, and kind of forming your day around that as much as you can.
I think that's a great point, and I really appreciate you giving that example. Because I think a lot of us can relate to that. You're doing something you enjoy while they're doing something they enjoy, and it's okay. Right. It also teaches them how to be alone and how to entertain themselves. And, and I always tell my kids, I'm glad you're bored sometimes. I want you to be bored. You need to figure out how to entertain yourself sometimes. It's okay to be bored once in a while or to have to play alone or something. But the other thing is that, we can add in the things that we love. Like you say, you can read to your children. I love
Right.
reading too. So I'm all about, sure, I'll do the nighttime story. No problem. Here, honey, you go
Yes.
brush the teeth. I don't want to do that. He's a dentist and he cares more. So I'm like, you care, so go brush the teeth and I'll read the stories because I love to read. And he's like, I don't want to read the story. So, find what you love to do and then try to teach your children. I love to travel. So I like taking my kids places and showing them things. And I like taking them with me to the store, and things like that. But, if I have to play choo-choo trains or something, that's going to be rough. And not that you don't, but another tip just for all you listening out there is to what I say is give them the first 10 minutes and they'll give you the hour. So when you're trying to get stuff done and you're feeling guilty, quote unquote, which we don't need to feel guilty, we're going to let that guilt go and realize that it's okay. If we realize we need to spend more time with our children or we need to play with them more, get down and play with them for 10 minutes. And I tell you, it's usually enough. Sometimes it leads to just playing longer if you're having fun or if everything's going well, or you give them that 10 minutes and then you get them doing something and then you can go work for a while and then you come back at the beginning of the next hour, give them another 10 or 15 minutes. And it just, for me, trying to trying to make good choices about my life to feel balanced, would be to try to do that so that I could get things done, but also feel like I really was still present for my kids and doing what they needed to do and not feeling like I was interrupted all the time and being upset with them or, letting them feel like I didn't care or I wasn't paying attention. So that's another suggestion for everybody. So,
Yeah,
okay.
and I think the word presence is, a big one there too. Like whatever you're doing, be doing that. Be all in for that, whether it's for 10 minutes or 20 minutes or whatever. But yeah, not being, halfway there and halfway somewhere else, because that's, I think, where a lot of our chaos and imbalance starts to come from too.
I'm with you. And for those of you listening who haven't listened to the episode on conscious parenting with Dr. Shefali, I encourage you to go listen to that because that's a great episode all about how to be more present with our children. I think that's really important. So tell us a little bit about, for those who are maybe feeling like cluttered in their life and who need some more clarity, we're talking about leadership. So how does feeling cluttered go with being a leader, do you think, in motherhood?
Yeah. I think feeling cluttered, oh my gosh, it impacts all areas of life,
Oh, yes.
I mean, you just think about excuse me, at least for me, if I walk into a room in my house, if it's, if there's papers and items everywhere, like my stress level just instantly, whereas if that space is somewhat clean and, that sort of thing, it just,
function
there's
somehow.
more
Yeah.
too. Yeah. So I think we have physical clutter. A lot of us have physical clutter. But also mental clutter, just all those thoughts, whether it's those shoulds or the guilt or, am I doing things right? The questions, all of that, we can really have a lot of mental clutter too. Yes. I think, things that we can do to bring clarity to all those aspects of our lives, even schedules, if you're booked every minute of every day, I mean, do you have breathing time? Do you have time to just sit and be still, whatever that is. Mm-hmm. So I think clutter impacts us in so many different ways, that when we can find ways to start clearing out the clutter, what comes to mind for me with this is, and I know you and I think we talked about this when we did the show a couple weeks ago for meaning and purpose too, but is the annual theme or choosing a word for the year. Mm-hmm. And it's something I've done for probably 10 or 11 years. And the reason that started for me is I was having, and I know everybody can relate to one of those weeks, this was And for me at that time, I had 2 toddlers and an infant. At the time, and one of my toddlers came home from preschool with the flu, stomach bug. One decided that this was the time of his life that he was going to get up and play in the middle of the night really loudly all the time, of a thing. And then my infant, my newborn, was actually had some health issues at the time, and so was needing a lot of attention with those. And my husband was out of the country for a week on business and my computer crashed. It was like one of those weeks where all those things just kind of come together. Mm-hmm. And the final straw for me was I went down into my basement. This was in February. And so I'm in Iowa. It's the middle of winter. If you can picture a lot of snow and cold, that's
We
what
can
it's like.
picture it, yes.
And I stepped into the
Absolutely.
basement and I stepped into a couple of inches of water.
Oh,
Our basement had flooded,
oh,
for whatever reason. So as I was bringing things up from the basement and bringing them upstairs and out to the deck, even though it's covered in ice or
oh,
whatever,
gosh.
just to try to save some of those things. And I had that thought after a while, and I was just exhausted anyway from everything. And I thought, we just have too much stuff.
Yeah.
And so I started bringing things upstairs and out to the truck and made a trip to, a charity, Salvation Army, and started donating some of those things. And what I decided kind of in that whole process was that I needed more focus in my life. It was kind of a metaphor for me that I was spreading myself too thin in a lot of different ways. My business was very new. I was trying to get that off the ground, just trying to do a lot of different things and feeling like I wasn't doing any of them at my best. So I chose the theme of focus for the year. And I thought, I don't know how how this is going to play out, but that's what I crave. That's what I really want. And that's how I want to be. So I'm going to set that theme and just see how that plays out. And it really was remarkable to me throughout that year how focus came to be. I really got into decluttering actually in that year. And just a lot of different changes that I made in my life, the presence, the mindfulness, different things that I was practicing. Some things worked better for me than others, but it was through that trial and error that I really started to like the morning practice piece really started to come clear for me. So setting a theme for the year, I've done that ever since. And it's always every year, I'm just amazed at the end of the year when I do my annual review and just kind of reflect on how has that played out. It's just mind blowing to me how centering that can be. And it's like the daily intention, it just kind of gives you a who and how I want to be, and that easy reminder of a simple word or a simple phrase so that you don't have to think too hard about it, but you can just ask yourself in a moment, am I being focused in this, or am I feeling focused? Or, one year for me, it was energy. I just wanted, I wanted to be energized in healthy ways. And so things that were draining my energy, I needed to pay attention to those and let them go or change them or whatever. And figuring out, what is it that energizes me, and doing the same, kind of letting that filter through my family too. Like, what are we doing as a family that's energizing us, or that we end the day, feeling like that was a really fun activity? And what are the things that we do that are like, yeah, maybe we don't need to do that again, So I think, again, it just comes back to that intention. I just keep coming back to that today because I think that's such an important part of leadership, of parenting, and of being the leader of your own life, is just setting those intentions, however that looks in your life, whether it's for the day, for the year, in the moment, but just being decisive about that.
Okay, I really appreciate all that. And I completely agree. I'm a fan of the yearly theme, and I've been also doing it I think this is my 14th year. And it does help. But, all of you listeners, you don't have to do it even for a year. But what you're saying, again, going back to it could be your daily theme, your hourly theme, your minutely theme, whatever it may be. Just something to kind of give you that focus and that intention of what you really want and what you're trying to achieve there. And then also your point about decluttering and physical versus mental, and how we need that space. I often say, and I know I've said on the show before, I have this quote on my wall that says, defend your inner space. And to me, that's part of decluttering, just sort of tuning out what we don't need. And, that might be some social media time. That might be, people in your life that you don't need. And it might be activities like you're saying, to help you not feel so burdened and overwhelmed as we so often do as moms. And I know all of you listening can certainly relate to that you feel mentally cluttered sometimes, even if you don't feel physically cluttered. But physical clutter is a whole other thing too. I'm working on that myself, and it's a process. I'm giving
another show there.
I know. I'm giving myself like 6 months to try to get the physical clutter of our home, taken care of, because it's true. We all know that when our physical surroundings are organized or looking good or nice, it brings you more peace and helps you achieve more, personally.
Yeah. And I love that you have like a 6 month, I want to do this. And so that's kind of, maybe your mini theme there, or whatever.
Yeah,
or
I guess it kind of is.
Seasons or something too, but just deciding this is what needs to change.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
We need to get organized, kids. And I'm trying to get my kids on board. That's the tough part, right? But when we step out and do it ourselves, like I started with my closet, all my clothes. Okay. So I did all my clothes. And not just in my closet, but the method I'm doing is sort of, you do all the clothes, you do it by category, right? So it's the KonMari method.
Okay.
Anyway, so I was doing my clothes first, right? And then that shows my kids. I went and showed them my closet. I actually painted my closet yellow, which I had always wanted it to be painted non-white. And so because I had taken everything out, I could paint it. And then you show your kids. So you're modeling, you're becoming a leader.
Yes.
So when you're taking care of your own clutter, you're also modeling for your kids, again, being a leader, right?
Yeah. I love that. I mean, I love that example because it just shows another way that we are being leaders. You might not think of that as leadership until until you just said that, but it really is such a great example of that, because it's one thing to go in and, go into one of your children's rooms and say, okay, we're going to declutter. Let's start here,
right.
And just imagine the response that would get.
Or do it when they're gone and just take all their stuff, right? like that's what I would normally do. Like wait till they're gone and then just take all the things I want them to declutter.
Yeah. But when how you've done it then by doing it yourself and kind of showing the benefits of that, I bet you are much more delighted when you walk into your closet. You have just all the benefits that come from that, and they see that. And it might not be an immediate, like the day you do it, the next day they're going to go do theirs. But so many of these things, I think, as parents that we do is over time, we just consistently model these things over time. Not that you have to go and declutter your closet every other week sort of thing,
no,
but
of course not.
But
not
yeah,
everybody
all
needs
of
that
those,
either. It's whatever it is, though,
right.
You're giving yourself enough time and space to do it and do it right, and let the children see you doing it, as a habit, sort of trying to create a habit for yourself. Yeah. So let's kind of transition then. Let's talk a little bit about a couple of more of these strategies that everybody can use to improve themselves as leaders in motherhood and as leaders in their own life. So tell us a little bit about planning with purpose. We've talked about intention, and I know that's part of it, but maybe you have something else to add with that. I know that's one of your strategies for how we can improve as leaders in our own lives.
Yeah. And I'm a big planner. That's just been in my nature, probably my whole life. And in fact, on my website, I've created a purpose planner to be more intentional with our planning and so forth too. So that's been a huge part of my life for a long time. Mm-hmm. But I think, there's a couple different components of that, just really briefly to help people get started here. If, wherever you are in your planning, if you love it, you love to plan, or if you're not a planner at all. Mm-hmm. But I think, deciding what your priorities are and starting with that, and not letting them just, kind of be in reserve for whatever time you have left over. So if you decide what your top 5 priorities are at this time in your life, then looking at your week and figuring out, am I honoring each of these priorities throughout this week? How am I doing that with your calendar, with your schedule, just actually physically? I think I first saw it with Stephen Covey. He talked about I'd have a glass jar, and thinking of your priorities as those big rocks. So if you have maybe 5 big rocks and you put those in the jar first, and then you have room to add like sand and pebbles and water and so forth. So there's room for all that other little stuff, or maybe not as important stuff. Mm-hmm. But if we fill up our calendar or our jar first with all the little stuff, like the shoulds or the whatever it is, all that sand and the rock or the pebbles and the water and everything too, and then try to fit our priorities in, we're not going to be able to do it. We're not going to be able to honor those things that matter most. So I think that's such a huge part of planning, is really, what are my priorities at this time, and how am I weaving them into my schedule? Mm-hmm. And the other thing I just want to share really quickly, because I think this is such a simple tool, but it can be so profound, and it's maybe a little bit more reflective, but it is keeping a success journal. And so I know we talked about journaling earlier, different kinds of journaling, but the success journal, how I see that, is, getting a journal or a notebook or something, some special place. Some people do it on their computer or iPad too, but having a place where you can every day just jot down one win that you've had, so like before you leave the office or before you go to bed at night or before, whenever it works for you, just jot down one win that you've had. And it's kind of along the lines of the gratitude journal idea, which I know a lot of people are familiar with, but this, when you're keeping track of your wins like that, first of all, it kind of shifts your attention. So you are focused more on the positives in your life. So even if you've had a really crummy day, knowing that I have to come up with at least one thing that I can put in my journal, it can be enough to kind of shift that whole mindset. And the other thing with that is, if you keep a success journal every day for 3 weeks even, and I'm saying just one sentence, like a quick bullet point, it takes maybe 1 minute.
Mm-hmm.
If you do that even for 3 weeks, and then you happen to have one of those days where you're feeling not so great, or am I doing anything right? Those kinds of things, you've got a track record of success to then look back on and be like, your mind isn't necessarily there, but you've got it written on paper to see, oh my gosh, I am doing some things right. So it can just be so useful and such a simple way to kind of bring that into life. So it could be, as a mom, it could be, how did I, what's a win that we had as a family today that I, inspired? Or what's something I did self-care wise today? How did I take care of myself today? Or, whatever it is, if you have a particular goal, what's one thing I did today to move me towards that goal? It can just be such a game changer and not take, it doesn't take very much time at all to do that.
That is a wonderful idea. And I hope everybody listening is writing this down right now, because I love that. I agree. I think a lot of people might have tried or are doing gratitude journals, which are wonderful. And I encourage everybody, you can teach your children to do gratitude journal. And success journal, though, that's perfect. I'm thinking, gosh, not only for myself, but for my children, especially the ones that are in that age where they're struggling with self-esteem, to see the things they're doing right and to feel good about themselves and remind themselves of all the things that they're doing right. And boy, don't we moms need that. It's like mom's success journal. Like, I am a success. I'm not a failure. I am a success. And I'm thinking of a time, I didn't do exactly that. I have never thought of it as a success journal. So I really appreciate that perspective shift. But during the time when we were, sort of inundated, when we had all our kids and we were trying to adopt our children, our two nephews, and their grandparents had been taking us to court, and court is like the worst thing ever. It just makes you feel terrible. Mm-hmm. People are accusing you of things, and they're saying we need to be evaluated as parents, and my self-esteem was shot. And so I started just writing down in the back of my journal just the sort of like the joyful moments or the little blessings I could see with my kids, like the little things that they would say that showed me that they were all right, or that they loved me, or that I, like you say, and I guess it was kind of me trying to prove to myself that I was doing okay in a sense. Yeah. And I love that. I did that for a good 6 months or so, and then I kind of stopped, but it really is a way to also find more joy in motherhood and find more meaning in your moments when you actually have to like think about the day and think, what was the best part of today, or what was the blessing for today, or what was the success for today. So I really appreciate that tip. That's great.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times, people say, I don't know what my purpose is. And that can be we're thinking of purpose with a capital P, like it's this big, I have to figure this out. Right. And I think this is such a great way to clue you into what that purpose is, because you start to realize, all of these things that I'm jotting down as successes are maybe related to things that I've done that have helped other people, or they're related to when I've had something that I didn't think I could do and I did it. Or, it starts to kind of clue you into what your own definition of success is. Mm-hmm. And I think when each of us can really decide that for ourselves and honor that without worrying about, what whoever next door is doing or whatever, just kind of really focus on what's meaningful for you, what's purposeful for you, and honor that, then you feel balanced, you feel centered, you feel like you're doing what you need to be doing and like you have purpose.
Yeah, I love that. I appreciate that, because I'm sure a lot of people do hear that word purpose and think, I don't know what my mission is or what my purpose is. I know, and I know that can really get people, worried and nervous, but I really appreciate that tip. And you're right. When we notice these things and we write them down, then we can look for the pattern of things that we enjoy doing, that light us up, that light other people up. And I always say your purpose, like everybody, we have one thing in common when it comes to our mission and purpose, is that it always involves some form of loving. It's loving in some form. It might be loving through music, or loving through, actually physical labor, or, playing, or whatever it is. But it's sort of your version of loving others is kind of probably what your purpose has to do with. So you can think about that. So, okay. So you were talking about kind of figuring things out. So what do we do? We got about 5 minutes left. What can those who are listening do when they don't have things figured out? When they don't know, they're hearing all this and they're going, I don't know I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I don't know where to start. We've had a lot of suggestions, but what do you say to those who are thinking, I don't have it all figured out? What do I do?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, first of all, you're in good company
Right. We're all
because none
kind
of
of in the
us have
same
it all
boat.
figured out.
Exactly. That's for sure. That's for sure.
Let's just get
Amen.
that out right now, right?
Yes.
Yeah, we're all doing the best we can with what we have. I totally believe that.
Hmm.
But I think one of the best things to do is to realize that you don't have to figure it all out. You can reach out to other people for help. You can go within for help. With some of the strategies that we've talked about, it's more that inward reflection of what's meaningful to me. What do I want to bring to this world? How do I want to be? But also reaching out to other people, whether it's, excuse me, it could be like when I think about when my kids were little, we had a neighborhood play group and we met every week. And, it was for the kids to get together and play, but it was just as much for the parents to get together and be able to, when you have that experience of, you're worrying about something or you're thinking, I'm the only person that has ever thought this or experienced this or whatever. And then you say it out loud to somebody else and they're like, oh my gosh, I think that all the time. And there's that instant like, oh, just relief.
Yeah, there's
So
that
I think
quote.
not,
I can't remember if it's by C.S. Lewis or something, but it's about something how like friendship is that moment when you see somebody else and you say, "Oh, you feel that way too." Kind of, like that's what friendship is. It's like, "Oh, I'm not the only one that feels that way." Okay, or I am not the only one that thinks that. That's what we all need that. So absolutely. Sorry, go ahead.
right. Yeah. And that requires some vulnerability, too, to be able to admit that we don't have it all together and that nobody has it all together and be okay with that. But then reaching out, whether it's like two friends like that, to your play group, to a therapist or a coach or a professional, I mean, there's just so many people, there's so many women's groups, whatever your passion is or whatever you tend to lose yourself in. I've cross-stitched for, I don't know, like 20 years or whatever, since college. And so for a long time, there was a group of women and we get together and cross-stitch. And so, during that, we would also be talking about all those things that were going on in life and having that common experience, while we were doing something that we loved. So I think the biggest point I can make there, and this is, from my own experience of a lot of times, I always joke that I'm a recovering perfectionist because I always want to figure it out myself and that sort of thing. And so I have to be conscious about reaching out to others and that sort of thing. It's become easier, as time goes by and you do it more, but realizing that you don't have to do it all yourself and being okay with, who can I reach out to? Who are some people? Because chances are, if you're reaching out to somebody, they're going to be just as thankful for that opportunity, to connect and to, help them feel meaningful and purposeful as well.
Such a great point. And, and that's really what it means to be a leader in your own life, I think is to acknowledge what's going on with you, to be real about it, and to look for ways to do it differently, we're talking about personal growth really here. And we're talking about when you want to be a leader in your own life, it's about taking charge of yourself and sort of trying to realize your own potential, right? And only we can do that. Nobody else can, but we can't do it alone. I think your point is so important. We definitely can't do it alone. And I want to transition just to our last little segment here, and this is a perfect transition because, for my Dr. Christi Simple Solutions segment, and today you get 2 Dr. Christies for the price of one, with the same spelling and everything, right? That's right. So we're both sharing our simple solutions here. Is to join a support group, a group online, something that can help you. And so I wanted to say that one thing that I have to offer is This Is How We Grow personal growth group. So if you are looking to, do the things we were talking about today, if you're looking to grow or change, or you don't know where to begin, you can go to my website at drchristinahibbert.com and you can join the personal growth group. There's already been 2 whole years of it, or 2 seasons, that you can go back and watch the videos and you'll get the emails and all of that. And then we're going to start up again. And this year we're going to be doing it through Google Hangouts live. So you could listen live and ask questions, or you could watch it recorded later. So if you feel like you need that support and you don't have it in your life, that's one way. Also, you can sign up through my website for my 30-day personal growth plan, where you'll get an email each day with a topic and just a little idea of what you could focus on for that day if you don't know what to focus on. Now, the other Dr. Christi has a program she would love to share too that can also help you in this, and that is the Aspire Success Club for women. So tell us a little bit about what that Aspire Success Club is all about.
Yeah, and there's a lot of information on my website on that too. So if you go to meaning-and-purpose.com, you can read a lot more about it. But it's
Okay.
it's really a group. We're starting our 6th year, and it's a group of women who are, it's really about connection, about growth, supporting one another in our goals and so forth too. So we meet from January to December. So we're enrolling right now for the year, and we're part, we get together every month. We have in-person meetings and we also have virtual meetings, kind of like what you were talking about. So
Oh.
we have members from California, Massachusetts, all over the place, which
Mm.
makes it super fun.
Mm.
So it's a great opportunity to kind of connect every month and, talk about important things, topics that matter to us. We talk a lot about confidence, balance or whatever we want to call it, different things like that. And it's more than just kind of talking and reading about these things, but how are you actually applying that? What's working for you? What isn't working, and so forth. And then the other piece of that group is everybody in the group sets a bold goal at the start of the year, and we have some training around that so you know how to do it.
Mhm.
And it's something that you want to be able to say about yourself essentially by the end of the year, something that you want to accomplish. So every month at our meetings, we do a quick check-in of everyone. Just tell us one quick thing you've done to move you closer to your goal. And then before we meet next month, what's one quick thing, what's one thing you'll do before we meet next time? And the group, in 2015, we had about 81 members, something like that. But our meetings are small. So everybody has that opportunity to share and to get ideas and feedback and so forth too. And so when we talk about reaching out to other people, it's a great opportunity to do that. Along with that too, I think surrounding yourself with positive people is huge. And, I think both of our groups and whatever groups you can find out there that are inspiring and positive and kind of keep reminding you of those things that are important and how you want to be is huge. So
Oh, yeah.
there's information on that on my website, and there's also, you can sign up for my newsletter and get free audios. I have, I think, 5 free audios you get right when you sign up, and then a weekly inspirational, just quick quote and coaching tip every Monday morning. So it's another just free opportunity that can come in your inbox too. So
Awesome. So definitely visit Christi's website at meaning-and-purpose. So meaning and purpose with hyphens in between the words.com. And check out that Aspire Success Club. It sounds wonderful. And I think your point was a really great one to kind of take us home here, that we do need to surround ourselves with the kind of people that sort of lift us up. I always say those are our A friends, the people that make us want to be better. If you surround yourself by with the C people that bring you down and that always are needing something from you, and that's all you're around, it's going to be really hard to push yourself up. But surround yourself with people that are like-minded and that are seeking the same kind of growth that you are, and you'll be a lot more successful.
yeah,
And so
awesome.
you can do that through our groups. All right. Well, thank you so much for being here,
Oh gosh, thank you. It's
sharing
been
all your
so fun.
wisdom.
It went by so fast.
I know, doesn't it? It always goes by fast for me too. I just absolutely love getting to talk to fabulous people like yourself, and I really appreciate your time and wisdom here on the show today, talking about leadership and motherhood. So I hope everybody listening will take the points that we talked about today and really, if nothing else, just have a little shift in your perspective and see yourself as a leader. As a leader in your home, in your relationships, in your work, in the world, in the community, in whatever you're doing, you have that choice to be a leader. If you just see yourself that way, that can make all the difference. Would you agree with that?
Yep. I totally agree with that. Well said.
Well,
Yes.
thank you. I appreciate that. And so keep that in mind until next time, everybody. And in the meantime, I hope you will visit me on my website at drchristinahibbert.com. There are links there to lots of articles on personal growth and different topics that we touch on, as well as some of the things we talked about today, and links to my groups that I mentioned, as well as to my books, This Is How We Grow, Who Am I Without You, and my brand new book, 8 Keys to Mental Health Through Exercise. And until next time, I hope you will choose to grow through motherhood and not just go through it, because it's a whole lot better to grow through it. And it's a lot more fun to do it together as we do each week here on Motherhood Radio. Have a great week, everybody. Bye-bye.